Thank you, Tara and Rick Giffin, for the beautiful music that you've given us this morning. Please stand if you are willing and able, in body or spirit, for our gathering song, number 108. My life goes on in this
Unitarian Universalist Society. In the words of Rumi, come, come, whoever you are. We here at South Valley you are welcome here, whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes. No matter where you've been, no matter where you are going, you are welcome here. No matter what body brought you in the door, no matter who you love, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God all of the time, or some of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. This is a community of open minds, loving hearts, and willing hands. You are welcome here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am not Reverend Karen Madrone. Reverend Karen has been sick all week. She was diagnosed with bronchitis and was actually in Instacare yesterday. So I invite you to join me all on an adventure in improvisation today, in which most of your order of service will be inaccurate. As testimony to that, we're going to start with a responsive reading. Please open your gray hymnals to 442. The responsive reading, We Bid You Welcome. That's 442. I will read the part in the regular type. Please read the part in italicized type. We bid you welcome, who come with weary spirit, seeking rest.
Who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid.
We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart.
who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous.
We bid you welcome, who are seekers of a new faith.
Who come to grow and explore, who come to learn.
We bid you welcome, who enter this hall as a homecoming.
Who have found here room for your spirit, who find in his people a family.
Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey,
We bid you welcome.
please stand in body or spirit as you are willing and able for our opening song, number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
Please join us in saying our chalice words in order of service. We light
This chalice
for
for the warmth of love,
for
for the light of truth, and for the energy of action.
Thank you.
You may be seated. My name is Sophia Hostini, not Nutrova, as in the order of service. One of these days we'll fix that. And I am today's lay worship leader. Pronouns I use are she, her, hers, and sometimes they. I would like to welcome you this morning to South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. We are an intentionally diverse religious community. All are welcome here. We would like to extend an especially warm welcome to those of you who are visiting us for the first time. We are so glad you're here. We would love to get to know you. This is a caring, supportive community. In the back of the chapel of the sanctuary, there's a book to write down your joys and concerns. Please feel free to share a joy or concern there. You may also use the pastoral care cards on the table underneath the chalice painting in the back of the sanctuary. You may hand them to an usher or place them in the collection plate. A member of our caring circle team will follow up with you. Children are always welcome in the sanctuary during the service. After the story, a nursery is available downstairs for friends younger than preschool age, and children from the ages of 3 through 12th grade are invited to participate in our age group religious exploration programs downstairs. We also broadcast the service on closed circle TV downstairs in the social hall and nursery. After the service, everyone is invited downstairs for fellowship and to check out the happenings where you will learn about many activities that are part of South Valley community. In addition, in the order of service, there are announcements that will help you learn about ways to participate in the life of this community. Please ask you to take a look at that when you have a chance. As we begin, I ask you that you please place your electronic devices in worship mode, and if you don't have the app, you just have to figure out how to do that. We encourage you to take pictures, post on Facebook, and tweet, but to do so quietly. Thank you. So at this moment, we'd like to share the work with our community. So we'll take a few minutes for you to turn and welcome your neighbor. And greet them and say welcome.
Is everyone ready for the story, even if I'm not quite? Yes. So we're going to scoot things around because I was from autopilot. I'd like to invite Leanna and the other heart to come on up for the time for all ages. Thank you all for coming up. Do you know what? In life, silly things happen like that, and you need help from your community, right? If I didn't have Scott helping me, I would be like, oh no, I'm so embarrassed. I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll move back to Chicago and leave this life behind. But because Scott was supportive and kind of was like, yeah, we'll just go with it, it was helpful. And just like that, in our community, we all are here to help each other. I want to talk about the Butterflies class. A lot of you are in the Butterflies class. That is our preschool through kindergarten class. It's called We Are Many, We Are One. Does anyone have an idea of what that might mean? Leah, what do you think?
I think that it means that there may be many kids, but they are all one mind working together.
Right, so even though we're individual people, we're still part of a collective community. So that goes for the entire world, but I read this story and I thought, this really reminds me of South Valley. Leah, could you help me by holding the mic next to me? Sit next to me. Thank you. This is not the first time Leo has done this, because Leo's a part of the community. He helps out so much. Thank you. All right, this book is called All I See is Part of Me. All I see is part of me. All I see is part of me. I am my hands, I am my feet, I am the puppy across the street. I am the moon, I even found in candy bars. I used to think I was small, a little body, that was all. Then one day I asked the sun, "Who are you?" He beamed, "We are one." "But Mr. Sun, how is this true? How can I be both me and you?" He smiled, "You might ask your sister Star. She too is part of who you are." As I waited until the night, when darkness let me see her light, "Sister Star, how can it be that I am you and you are me?" She glowed, "You're larger than you know. You are every place there is to go. You have a body, this is true, but look at what's inside of you." I closed my eyes to see within. I saw a light and made me grin. It reminded me of Sister Star. That light is who you are. Your body is just a little part of the light that shines within your heart. In the world and all of space, your light shines bright. It's every place. And when you join it dot to dot, you will see what you've got. All the plants and animals and trees are in your light and you are these. Look inside each one you meet and see your light. It's so complete. Inside, outside, below, above, see your light and feel its love. You are asking you when you ask me, so you know everything, don't you see? This is a very abstract book. I looked again at all my light, and I saw that Sister Star was right. For every question there could be, the answer is inside of me. All I ever had to do was ask a part of me that knew. And then I said, "There's something more. Each question opens up a door, and every door that I walk through leads to a part of me that's new." Thank you so much, Sister Star. I love the part of me you are. I wondered as I climbed in bed, does all of me sleep when I rest my head? And then a voice, I guess it was me, replied and spoke most lovingly. "Even when you sleep, you are awake in every shining star." I snuggled with my teddy bear and saw his light. He saw me there. You are me and I am you. You love me, I love you too. I closed my eyes and found my light, dancing in the moonbeams that night. I said a prayer I knew was heard, because all it is hears every word. And I can see in all of me that there is to be. No end. The end. All right, I'm gonna challenge us all to be comfortable with stillness while I consult with Scott and Kristen for 1 second on what to do next. We can go ahead. We're good. Thank you for sitting in stillness for that half a second. And I appreciate everyone's patience today. It really is a practice of thought. So my friends, what we're gonna do now, my friend Grace is at the bottom of the stairs to welcome you. We're gonna go downstairs and go to our classes. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So thank you everyone for having fun with me.
our ability to adapt and to continue forward when we can handle change, even when it's unexpected, from a simple mistake of bringing things out of order. So at this point, I think we can return back to our normal schedule. I'd love to invite Kristen May to share her South Valley story.
Hello, I'm Kristen May. I've been attending South Valley for about 7 years or so. It's okay if you don't recognize me. I'm mostly downstairs. I'm a junior high teacher right now, but I'm usually down there. I have 4 kids who also come to South Valley, sometimes with me. Autumn and Alex are in the senior high group. Andy's in the junior high, and then I've got Anita, who's in the 4th grade. Like a lot of people in this congregation, I was raised Mormon. My ex-husband, who I'll call Mike because that's his name, he converted to Mormonism when we were dating, and we were married in the temple, started having kids, we're raising our family Mormon. I thought everything was great until about 5 or 6 years into our marriage, when he came to me and told me that he no longer believed in Mormonism. And after some talk with him, I realized that he wasn't going to be changing his mind. We were both committed to the marriage and making it work. So I started looking for help during that time, because it was hard for me having a spouse that was leaving my religion. And I had a hard time finding just like some advice, some help inside of the church for that period of transition in our family. I ended up finding an online community for people in the same situation to get that support that I needed. But that was kind of the first time that I felt disappointed in my religion, felt like it wasn't giving me what I needed. And that kind of continued over the next couple of years, more and more things as really looking at my own religion and what I believed, started not making as much sense to me. And at that time, probably about like a year or two after he left Mormonism, he's actually the one that found South Valley. Started coming here pretty regularly. And our older 3 kids, we gave the choice if they wanted to go to Mormon church or Unitarian church. And they never, I don't think, ever came to Mormon church again. Like, they just loved the religious classes here, and they were more interesting and more fun. And so they were regular members here. We decided kind of as a family that it would be nice to worship together at least occasionally. So once a month I started coming to South Valley. And at the time I still identified as a Mormon. So sometimes people's eyes would get a little big when I told them I was Mormon, and like kind of a mixture of, unsurety, like they weren't sure how to react to that, or maybe a little scared to have, believing Mormon. But to everyone's credit, no one made me feel unwelcome. And I felt accepted here despite having a different view of things than a lot of people were attending. As I continued coming once a month, I found myself in a position where I felt spiritually fed when I was coming to these services, and I was feeling more and more spiritually frustrated as I was attending my Mormon services. Just more and more my beliefs had shifted, and I no longer felt comfortable there. And it took me a lot longer than Mike to leave the Mormon church, but over the course of probably a couple years, after I started coming here, I fully left. I no longer attended Mormon service, and I was a full-timer here. And we were really happy here. We ended up moving to Massachusetts for a year, just wanted a change, wanted to get out of Utah, and attended a Unitarian church there. It was a different feel to it, but it took a little longer to kind of feel that family feel that I always felt here. And it was also difficult because during that course of the year that I was in Massachusetts, like my marriage completely fell apart. And as I was trying to decide whether or not to stay in Massachusetts or come back to Utah, kind of making my list of pros and cons, South Valley did come into the mix. I mean, it was a consideration just knowing that if I came back here, I would have that church community to support me, as well as my actual family. And ultimately, obviously, here I am, I came back. And I just remember that first week back at church, and just seeing friends again, and just feeling like I had come back home. And it was a really special feeling to me. I felt like I had made the right choice. So that's kind of my story. I am a pledging member here, and I do think it's important. Just the kind of the major points in my life when I needed extra support, like when I was leaving the Mormon church, and kind of when I came back after my divorce, I felt like having a minister here that was able to kind of give me what I needed, unlike my previous experiences. Like, that's something that I think is valuable, something that I want to continue to support people who have been trained in these positions, and also kind of are more open to different beliefs, I guess. And also just the programs we offer here, I feel like I've always been really impressed with how money is managed here and what we're able to do with it. The one thing about being in Massachusetts was I was in a community that was very wealthy. Their church had a lot of money, and I was able to see like some of the things that they were able to use that money for. And I feel like we do a really good job with what we have here, but you know, there are some things that it takes money to really be able to fully implement some of the programs that we want to do, and as well as giving of our time. So that is my story, and yeah, I'm just really happy to continue being here, and I'll try to make it upstairs a little more.
Today we have a special guest for our charitable giving moment. Please welcome Jenna Williams from the NAACP.
Good morning. Good morning. And I absolutely do feel welcome. So thank you so very much for having me here, and the NAACP, and the information that's in the program is accurate, and we've been around in Utah for over 100 years, and on a national level for 111 years. And so we were founded in 1909 by a group of black and white citizens for all of the injustices, and in that particular time, the lynchings that were going on. The NAACP, some of the issues that we face today have been bullying in schools. You would be surprised at the number of complaints that we receive locally here with the bullying in schools, and then also the disparate discipline that the maybe principals and the teachers have on our school children. And so we have to always be aware of the things that's going on in schools, because you know the principals and the teachers are trying their best to do what they feel is good to do. But that's one of the reasons that the NAACP, we work very closely with all of the superintendents in all of the school districts. And we've had meetings with them to make sure that they know that the NAACP is very concerned about the bullying and anti-bullying in schools. We've written the policy that's on a national level that came from our Salt Lake City branch. And one of the things that we do is distribute this information to the schools and making sure that they are aware of the different things that we do as a civil rights organization. Because some of the times, yes, we have to go in and meet with the school officials when when we receive complaints about what are the things that's going on in schools. We do voter registration, and I will make sure that we invite everyone here to participate in our voter registration. We're nonpartisan, and so when we register people, we don't ask, what their political affiliation. We just register folks, and we urge them to go to the polls and to vote. During the legislative sessions, there's a lot of different issues that's going on: environmental justice, the education issues, the prescription drugs, making sure that we can get lower costs for drugs. So we do all of those different things and making sure that our voices are being heard during the legislative sessions as well. And sometimes when we can't go in person to be there, we always make sure that we can call, or we get our tree calling groups together and making sure that they can call, making sure that they are letting folks know that we are either against the bill or for the bill, and making sure that, if are addressing all types of discrimination. We have on our executive committee, which our executive committee is very diverse. People think that the NAACP, we're completely all African Americans, but we're not. We're very diverse rainbow color of faces that encompasses our executive committee. And we have about 4 attorneys that serve on this executive committee. And when we have different issues that come up, one may address discrimination with maybe some police. So we have an attorney that really addresses those particular issues. Well, we have our education department as well, which I mentioned, and that chair makes sure that if there's different issues going on in the schools, that we can set up meetings and talk with the schools on those type of issues. So we're very diverse. We have a lot of different committees that we have within our executive committee of the NAACP. And again, we're very concerned about the census. And we want to make sure that everybody knows that their bodies count. And we want to make sure that we can get everybody, make sure that they count, because the forms are going to be coming out in March, and we want to make sure that everybody's counted. So we're going to be working on that. We have an event coming up next week where we're encouraging the community folks to get more involved in the census and census taking, and making sure that they contact their families and make sure that they do fill out any forms that they come about, or if they need help, then there's telephone numbers that you can call and help folks to be able to fill out those forms and making sure. So right now, our census and then our voter registration were extremely important to us, and some of the other issues too, but those two we're going to be really working on a lot. And so we will be sending out, if you're not on our mailing list, but I think you are, because I know before Reverend Patty Willis, and I worked with her a lot, and so she was always good about making sure that she tried to get the word out to folks, and so we want to continue that relationship. And again, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for thinking about the NAACP, our Salt Lake branch, and all the work that we do. In fact, I say work, but all of our work, all of our committees, all of our chairpersons, our executive committee, we work on a volunteer basis. So we don't get paid at all. I'm retired now, so all of the hours that go in working and doing the things that you see, maybe you see me sometime on TV, on the radio, or obvious, then all of that's on my own time. So I'm often doing way over 40 hours a week. And so it's probably part of the reason why I'm on board today. I had to go to New York last week for our annual meeting, and so all that, different traveling and talking and everything. So I was really hoping that I would be able to be here today, because I didn't want to miss this. And this won't be my last time being here. I appreciate it very much. And about healthcare, they know that the work that we do. So we've worked in the community, like I said, on a wide variety of different issues. And it's not that well, we know we can't be everything to everybody, But what we try to do is make sure that we're doing civil rights and we're addressing the issues that affect our community as a whole. And everybody can be members of the NAACP, in fact, as well, because you don't have to be African American to be a member. If you're concerned and you want to make sure that you're a member, membership is $30 for 1 year, and you could get a crisis magazine from our national headquarters as well. So we're very diverse and welcome everybody to become members. And again, thank you so much for thinking about the NAACP and appreciating the work that we do. And again, I do feel welcome. Thank you.
So does anybody have any questions for Janetta? Okay, we have one.
Yes, we do have, young folks, we have a NAACP Youth, Salt Lake Youth Council, and we have college chapters as well. So we have, presently we have a college chapter at University of Utah, Westminster, Utah Valley University, and we're in the process of looking at getting one at Salt Lake Community College for now.
This isn't a question, but just a thank you, Janetta. You said that the NAACP has been here 100 years, and you've been here as long as you were alive. Thank you, happen. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Onto that, but in fact, when my granddaughter was only 3 years old, and she had told some kids at her school, there wouldn't be an NAACP if it wasn't for my grandma. So that makes me feel old.
How do we address political bullying? We've passed 3 initiatives in this state. They passed, and then the legislature decides that as a benevolent parent, they know better than the people. How do we address that as the people?
I think the best way to address it would be for people trying to come together, you know, organize different groups, and not go up as just one individual or maybe 1 or 2 people, but try to address it as a whole. Because, yeah, there is a lot of political bullying going on. That's why one of the reasons that we're so concerned about the bullying in schools is that because a lot of times what our children see is the political bullying, and then they mark that, and then they're doing different things at school. Because it's just, it's been happening a lot. And to be honest with you, we had, after the elections in 2016, we had a large number of children that were coming home and complaining to their parents that people were, other children were telling them, oh, now you're going to have to go back to Mexico. And so that was very heartbreaking. And we had so many that was coming in that we had to just make contacts with all of the superintendents and say, tell your principals to make sure that they're addressing these issues with the parents, letting them know that they are addressing those in the schools. And so they did, and then it stopped. So I think with people speaking up and saying something, a lot of times these different things will stop.
Hi, I'm currently the president of the board here, and I'd like to introduce an idea that hasn't been broadly discussed, but part of our role is to be strategically thinking about the future. And one of the things we really, really want to do is connect and partner with communities of color. And one thing we have a lot of is space, and we are available like Sunday nights. So if you have a church group that's looking for a place to worship, or if you have community meetings you'd like to hold, that's something that we may be able to partner with you with. And I just throw that out for people to be discussing and chewing on, because we present ourselves as a welcoming community. We want to draw that specific deadlines. Most people aren't aware of them, and most minorities are the ones who need to get in probably the most because we're so lacking in representation, almost in everything. But do you guys offer anything like that?
We do offer scholarships, and at our January Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Luncheon is when we present those to college students that have applied for scholarships. And they range from $500 to mostly $2,500, $3,000. And so, and what we do is 100% of the funds that we get for scholarships go directly to the school in the student's name. So we don't even keep one penny of it. Everything goes directly to the college with that letter and with the check, to the students. But we do offer scholarships, yes.
Do you have workshops available for others who are seeking entry into any other scholarship base that you're familiar with?
No, we don't have any workshops.
Okay. Thank you.
You're right.
Thank you, Janetta. We are very grateful for everything that you have done. Your volunteer hours. So, will you please join me in the offering words that are printed in your order of service? We are the church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts.
Love, through us, blesses and multiplies all that we have, all that we give, and all that we receive. May these gifts be a blessing to South Valley and to the NAACP. It occurs to me that in the tumult of this morning, I said who I wasn't, but not who I was. My name is Scott Renshaw. It is my pleasure and honor to serve currently as the chair of the membership committee here. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And I would like to share a reading today called "The Church Where Everything Goes Wrong," which, believe it or not, was planned before everything that happened. 6 weeks, this is, excuse me, by Reverend Alea Kemper. 6 weeks into the church year, I realized that I am the minister of a church where things usually go wrong. This morning, the copy machine jams repeatedly. The bulletin describing the order of worship has been copied with the second page first, and also upside down. No one has remembered to turn on the lights in the sanctuary before the service, so it is dark because it is raining. The microphone is buzzing and lets out a painful, high-pitched squeal which makes people wince. We've just started the service when someone runs up with a bunch of flowers for the altar just as someone else runs in with one of silk arrangements that we keep for the mornings when no one brings real flowers. There is laughter as the two flower bearers meet at the altar. They decide on the real flowers and things settle down for a while until a baby starts crying, which sets off another baby crying. I try to speak over the wailing as their fathers hustle them down the aisle and try to distract them in the back. Usually I love watching the tall, gentle fathers who bounce babies in backpacks at the rear of the sanctuary, but today I'm annoyed because I want it to be quiet and holy and lovely, and things are definitely not shaping up that way. The woman who is helping with worship gets up and instead of giving the announcements, introduces candle lighting time, which comes later. People yell out, "Not yet!" There's more laughter. The organist starts playing the wrong hymn, and a couple of choir members yell over the din for him to stop. A few minutes later, during the period for prayerful silence, he accidentally falls onto the keyboard, causing the organ to emit horrible gassy noises. Shrieks and snorts of laughter. All pretense of Sunday morning decorum is lost, and something inside me, some furious, bossy desire to have my worship service go according to my plan, finally slides free, and I can laugh with it. This will be the first of many times that I laugh at Sunday morning details gone awry. It is also the first of many times that I imagine that God is watching, looking up or down or over or out at us from wherever God sits on Sunday mornings, slightly amazed and maybe at a loss for words because we, God's people, are so funny and wonderful and odd all at the same time. In moments like these, I imagine God as a sturdy old woman with her hands on her hips, or perhaps a rabbi pulling on his long white beard. I imagine God shaking his or her head and saying, "What in the world are they doing over there? This is what they call church? What were they thinking?" But I also imagine a God who is touched and maybe a little honored by our efforts, however halting, to worship and give praise. I imagine a God who is moved by our attempts to care for one another and to name the things we know as holy. There is a warmth in this congregation that is new to me, a simple friendliness that shines through the fumblings and failures, a love that makes the ragged edges smooth. I've always wanted to believe, really believe, that our mistakes aren't the most important parts of us. I've always wanted to believe that kindness and compassion matter more than anything. I sense that I can learn that here. I'm going to tell you a story. For this story, I ask you to journey back with me to the carefree, magical days of exactly 1 week ago. I was aware that this week's service would be in part focused on the launch of our stewardship campaign. And having been the co-chair of stewardship for multiple years in the past, I knew that there were a lot of roles to fill and a lot of different skill sets that needed to be folded into this effort. But I also knew that volunteering for something at South Valley is perilous business. Did I have time for what I was thinking I might be able to do? Would I find myself overstretched and overcommitted? Was this the right time for me to do what I knew needed to be done? Ultimately, I decided to approach David Wilcox, one of the stewardship team members, and let him know that I was comfortable, if needed, being the one who could stand up and do the rah-rah cheerleader part of talking about giving to this congregation. It was something I'd done before, and I'd gotten fairly positive feedback. And David was thrilled that I'd offered, and after some email coordination with him and Reverend Karen, it seemed that I would only be needed to talk for 3 or 4 minutes. And I felt good about my willingness to help. Flash forward to the middle of the week, and I became aware that Reverend Karen was quite sick. It occurred to me that if she was really struggling with being up to giving a sermon, that might be a role I could step into. After all, I'd been in the pulpit before, in a variety of roles, and I knew that given enough time, I could bring my writing skills to bear on this task. Did I really have that time? I'd been feeling kind of blah myself and was looking forward to some upcoming time when I could just relax. Was this the right time for me to do what I knew needed to be done? So I sent Reverend Karen an email offering to flesh out the 3 to 4 minutes I was already planning into the longer central talk in this service. She thanked me for the offer, but said she thought that with some rest in the days still ahead between then and Sunday, she'd be able to deliver the sermon. And let's face it, is there anything that feels better than volunteering to do something than not having to do it? And still getting credit. Flash forward again to yesterday morning. As I got back from a shopping trip and checked my email, there was a message from Reverend Karen. She was still feeling quite sick despite her earlier optimism and asked if my offer still stood to take over the longer sermon part of the service. And I'm not going to lie, my first instinct was to say no. The time I'd set aside in my head when I first made the offer was Friday night. I had a long list of to-dos for a Saturday, and writing a couple thousand words wasn't on it. Was this the right time for me to do what I knew needed to be done? I suppose the fact that I'm standing here right now is the spoiler for how the story ends. I responded that I'd take care of it, and I immediately sat down to start writing, trying not to instantly regret my decision. There is a moral to this story, and it's not, isn't Scott awesome for being so selfless? Although if that's the moral you want to take away from me, who am I to stop you? But I have a different moral in mind, one that I think applies better to the launch of the stewardship campaign. And that moral is, it almost never feels like the right time for you to do what you know needs to be done. If you've been attending Sunday services here at all regularly for the last few years, you know that one of the more consistent components of those services is a congregant sharing where I'm here like Kristen did today. What I want to share as we begin our stewardship campaign is a variation on that I'm going to call Why I Give. There are a lot of different ways to answer that question for myself that are true, but also incomplete. One answer is that I give both of my time and my money because I can. My family is fortunate to have the resources that allow us to be financially generous, and the circumstances of my life are simple enough that I'm not constantly getting pulled in 100 different directions. Another answer is that I give because I derive a personal benefit from this community in terms of what I take with me throughout the week from services and the connections that I've made here. And still another answer is that I give because I'm trying to set a good example, because if someone who's been here for more than 20 years isn't going to step up, then who will? As I said, all of those answers are true, but only part of the bigger picture answer. As Unitarian Universalists, we have a spiritual message that needs to be heard and amplified in a world that often feels broken and cruel.
Amen.
We believe that no matter what you have been told by other faith traditions, you are whole and holy and loved.
Yes, yes.
Without preconditions and without yes buts. We believe that we have not just the ability, but the obligation to change the world for the better. We believe that as long as we act in love and mutual respect, the rest of what we believe is a matter of our own conscience. What would this country and this world look like if more people were able to embrace that message? I think most of us here agree on those ideas in the broad strokes, if not in every detail, or we wouldn't be here. The question becomes, then what? The Reverend Vale Weller, the Congregational Giving Director of the Unitarian Universalist Association, notes that statistically speaking, Unitarian Universalists have the highest average income level among all American faith groups. We are also, statistically speaking, the American faith group that gives the least to our own churches. The point of raising this statistical reality is not to shame people into being more generous, because you can't shame people into being more generous. But it is worth interrogating the disconnect between what we believe to be true about how to heal this world and how that belief plays out in our actions. We know what matters. We know what matters. Then what? Every week when we take our offering, we say the words, "We are this church." I'm just not sure how often we think about what that means. A hierarchy that tells us how we have to worship is not this church. The minister, whether temporary or settled, is not this church. God herself is not this church.
Thank you.
It's us. It's just us. That's an amazing level of freedom of conscience, but with that freedom comes a responsibility. When we want to make our building accessible to people of all abilities, it's us. When we want to put solar panels on our roof to help live our principles, it's us. When we want to hire and relocate a new minister, as we're trying to do right now, it's us. No angel is going to descend from heaven to make all of those things possible. It's us. And we're going to screw up. And not just in the ways mentioned in today's reading, although in the 20 years I've been here, I've probably seen every one of those things at least once. Probably more than one in any given service. We make mistakes, and we disappoint one another, and we disappoint ourselves. But that's not the reason to withdraw. That's the reason to celebrate a faith that proclaims everyone, no matter our failings, is holy. We are this church, and when we stumble, we forgive ourselves, we forgive one another, and we begin again in love. Reverend Erica Hewitt, the Unitarian Universalist minister in Maine, says, "Giving is, for me, both a statement and expression of my faith. I give in all the ways I give, and from all the means that I can give, with intention. I give to strangers in need. I give to my congregation with its mission to transform its members so that we may transform the world. I give to Unitarian Universalist organizations such as the UU Service Committee and my district's Chalice Lighters program so that my monetary statement of faith is amplified by merging with the gifts of others. I give because I choose not to harden my gaze and narrow my heart. I choose not to be seduced from my perch, where abundance is visible and alive in the world, by the siren song of, 'There's not enough. Hang on to what's yours.' That sense of not enough is what I had to resist in the story with which I began this talk. In my case, the not enough was time. For some of you, that not enough fear is money. There's no way for me to know what specific circumstances make demands on your individual resources of time or money, but I do know how easy it is to think that now isn't the right time to do what you know needs to be done. For me, what shifts that internal conversation is a focus on a sense of mission. A shift from saying no because you worry about what isn't possible to saying yes because you imagine yourself as part of what is possible. Every Sunday, people walk in these doors for the first time. Some of them want to have their children learn moral lessons without fear, shame, and a hierarchy of who is more blessed. Some of them seek other motivated people with whom they can work on the issues that matter to them. Some of them have been told by other faith traditions that they or members of their family were not worthy of a full measure of God's love. I give because I want those doors always to be open for those people, so this community can be a place of healing, support, inspiration, and action. I give because even when those of us here get frustrated with the details, who's going to run a committee or how much time it can take for something to change, we have to remember this faith's ability to show a better way of being in the world. I give so that for the next 20 years, and for 20 years after that, and for 20 years after that, people will be able to stand up in front of Sunday services and share stories of why they're here and why they give. This coming church year, we're looking at a time of transition and transformation. Imagine yourself as part of it, because we are this church. Imagine reaching deeper into the time and money you can give. Imagine the story you'll be able to tell about the time your first instinct was to say no, but instead you said yes. Every triumph of this world is a story of saying yes. My perspective is that stories of yes are the only stories that have happy endings. Please rise and body your spirit for our closing song, number 118, This Little Light of Mine.